I was born in 1993 in Hamilton, New Zealand. My family was always quite poor, but 2 years after I was born, my mother became pregnant and we decided to move to Australia because it was cheaper and there were more work opportunities. A few days after we arrived, my mother went into labour. When she came back with my little brother, I hated him so much I drew all over his pictures. We got along well after a while, even though I didn't understand his obsession with Hot Wheels. Our older brother and sister used to like telling us lies to see what they could get away with. Once they told us not to touch the rocks in the fountains because it leads out to the ocean and sharks swim under them. From as early as I can remember, I've loved drawing. When I was 3, I made my first self-portrait. I still have it on my wall. Around the same time, I wanted to learn to read, and would wake my mum up at 5 a.m. with books I wanted to read. I loved animal books, anything by Roald Dahl, and later on Harry Potter. I was homeschooled, and my parents didn't really have any restrictions on what we watched, so I watched almost anything that was on. I really loved watching sitcoms and stand-up. I had an invisible friend that no one knew about, and a real one who was my neighbour. A year later, he had to move away, and I never saw him again. I met another boy who soon became my best friend, but I didn't want him to be because he smelled. A year later, he also had to move away. After him, my next best friend was a girl. We were friends for a few years until her mother decided that she wanted her to be friends with another girl because she wanted to be friends with that girl's mother. I decided that I should never get very attached to anyone because just about everyone I knew couldn't live anywhere long enough for their kids to go to a normal school because they were mostly traveling families and circus people. In 1998 for Christmas, we got a Nintendo 64, and I started getting more interested in video games. Although I had already played my older siblings' Game Boys, I never got into them as much as I did the N64. Animals have always been a big part of my life, even though we never had any pets until I was 11. We were volunteer animal rescuers for the RSPCA. We would look after injured and sick wildlife. In 2003, we moved from the suburbs to the country and stopped being volunteers, but we do occasionally look after animals if they need us. When I turned 11, I got majorly into philosophy, history and science, watched a lot of documentaries and stopped eating meat. We lived out in the middle of nowhere, and a little while before 2005, I was crying because I didn't have any friends, and for some reason I thought that school would change that. So when the new year started, I was enrolled for grade 7. I was amazed by how loud it was, and for the first couple of days, I couldn't hear anyone. I quickly found out that that thing that people tell you about making friends doesn't apply to everyone. I was tall, chubby, very quiet, and felt very awkward all the time. None of the kids wanted to talk to me, so all I did was draw all day. One of our assignments was to sing, and I didn't want to sing in front of my class, which, among other reasons, they thought meant that there was something wrong with me. They sent me to be tested by the principal's wife, who decided that I was stupid. About a month after that, I quit. I then got really into the online world, and started watching YouTube quite a bit. At this point, I only really watched Charlie Is So Cool Like and Raptor. From 13 to 15, nothing really happened, but when I was 16, I started to really worry about what I was going to do for a career. I worried that I wouldn't be qualified for anything, so the next year I applied for Year 10 TAFE, which is basically Year 10 for any age. This was the first time I had to be in the city alone. I didn't get along with any of the people there. This is when things start to get very stupid. Promise me that you'll never ever do any of the things I'm about to tell you, okay? Never. Never ever ever ever. Never do these things. During the mid-year break, I figured my standards were too high, and became friends with people I really didn't like or relate to in the slightest. I figured at least I'll have someone to talk to. Within this group was a short, scraggy, loud smoker, who somehow ended up being my boyfriend. I still have no idea how that happened. In January 2011, he left to see his family in Sydney for a month. We would talk on the phone almost every day. One day I started feeling really sick about him, like something horrible was going to happen. He didn't call me that night, but I knew exactly what happened. He cheated on me. I'm going to cut some parts of the story out, because it's kind of long, so I'll do an abridged version. I told him I knew. He made out he didn't do anything, and that I was being a bitch because I didn't trust him. One of our friends told me that he did cheat, so I called him, and he started crying. I felt bad for him, and I stayed with him. Never ever stay. The longer I stayed with him, the more abusive he got. I really wanted to leave him, but I was afraid of what he might do. I cried almost every day. We lived 2 hours apart from each other, and he never came to my house. So after months of fighting with my family over why I was with him, I snuck out of his house one night and tried to lessen my contact with him. A month later I broke up with him, which led to having to unplug the phone and turn off my mobile, blocking him and his friends from everything online. To be honest, I'm still afraid he'll find me. In 2012, life was a lot easier, but I still needed something to get me back to normal. I started to remember that I liked watching Charlie on YouTube, so I went back online to watch him, and found all these other YouTubers, like Nerimon, PBG, JonTron, and all these other people who, by watching their videos, got me out of my depression. I realized I wanted to be a concept artist, an illustrator, and just recently have been starting to make videos. I feel a whole lot better about where my life is going. I'm pretty happy now. So yeah, that's my story so far. Sounds really depressing the way I explained it, but I skipped most things and stuck to the things that had the most impact on me. My life wasn't always crap.